let's start with a speaker with an incredible story. He's an ultramarathon runner, recovering addict, and author of the book Running Man, a memoir of ultra endurance. He says, I'm an addict who runs and a runner who writes. Running and running far is at the core of my vitality and enduring sobriety. So he's here to tell us his story while running. Please welcome my dear friend, Charlie Engle.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit of my story here at the Never Alone Summit. As you might be able to tell, I love to be in motion. I think that movement is the core to just about everything. When I'm moving, my body feels good, my brain works better, and overall, I just feel like I'm a better part of the universe. So I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that many of you watching this right now are probably seated in a comfy spot. So I would ask you, as B.B. King would say, do what you do right where you are. And if you feel like it, stand up, do a couple of stretches, take a couple of deep breaths, do something that makes you feel grounded and part of the universe at this moment. And then we'll get on with this. So when I was 29 years old, my first son was born. His name was Brett, and Brett didn't know it, but he was going to be my savior. For that previous 10 years, I'd really struggled with addiction and alcoholism, and I tried everything to quit, or at least I felt like I had. I've been to treatment. I'd gone to AA meetings, NA meetings. I'd gone to church. I'd seen a shaman. I even searched for a witch doctor. I never could find one, so if you know one, be sure to let me know. Basically, I would do anything to remove this burden because I knew it was killing me. So when my son came along, I put that burden on him. And I decided that surely I could stay sober for my son. And for a little while it worked. I had great strength, I had hope, and I felt like I had purpose. 2 months into his life, I found myself driving to the worst neighborhood in town, not for the first time. And I spent the next 6 days killing myself with crack and drinking, and that 6-day binge ended with me seated on the ground, handcuffed. The cops were searching my bullet-riddled car, bullets that were put there by someone who was trying to kill me. And you know what? I didn't care at that moment. I felt like I wasn't meant for this earth. But as I'm sitting there, I watched the policeman reach under the driver's seat of my car and pull out a glass pipe. And he held it up and he turned around and looked at me. And any rational person, remotely sane, would have been thinking, this is going to be bad. Like, I'm really going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm going to jail. This is going to mess up my life. And you know what I was thinking? So that's where that was. I spent like 2 days looking for that thing. And I'm sorry for the sick, sort of twisted humor, but that was how sick I was. That was the reality. You know, as an addict, I felt like I was just broken, and even my son couldn't break that cycle. I felt love from him and for him that I had never felt in my entire life. Yet that wasn't enough to keep me clean and sober. So as I'm sitting there on the ground, wondering what's going to happen next, I realized I had a decision to make. And that decision was actually pretty simple. I had a choice between living and dying. And to be honest, I chose running. And what I mean by that is I recognized that nobody was coming to save me. My son couldn't save me. My boss couldn't save me. My wife couldn't save me. No power outside of me could save me. And so on that night, I went to my first AA meeting, the first one that I ever had gone to, where I actually wanted to learn something. I wanted to get something out of it. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to hear what other people had to say. And I got up the next day and I went for a run. And that run was probably only 2 or 3 miles, super painful, ugly, awful. But I made a commitment that day to keep doing those 2 things. And for the next 3 years, without missing one single day, I went to a recovery meeting and I went for a run without missing one day. And I ran hard. I ran, in fact, 30 marathons or more during that 3-year period of time. Obviously, I had that whole addiction thing under control. And I say that jokingly because my behavior, at least from the outside, probably looked very similar to addiction, just without the drugs and the alcohol. And I wondered at times, had I just switched addiction? But the reality is, addiction is about being invisible. It's about hiding, about having no feelings, or if I dared had a feeling, I would drink or drug it away. Running, movement, is the exact opposite. When I'm running a marathon or longer, I will reach a point where there is nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go but in this head and in this heart. And I have to find a way to keep moving. And so that's what I did. I just continued to find a way to keep on moving forward. And I think my mother said it best, as moms will sometimes. She actually looked at me after a couple of years of this really hard running. She said, it feels like you're trying to run the addict out of you. And I realized she was right. So what I was trying to do was literally take a scalpel of running and cut the addiction part of me out, because I thought that guy was trying to kill me. And it took those 3 years of running to understand that, in fact, addiction was my superpower, and it still is today. And without it, without those addictive qualities, I might not be good at anything. So if I could just find a way to harness the power of my addictive nature, my obsessive qualities, and point that energy at something meaningful and passionate, then maybe I could make a life for myself. So, being the good addict that I am, I learned those wonderful lessons from running marathons. So I decided one day, what if I run 50 miles? What lesson would I learn then? What if I run 100 miles? What if I can run hundreds of miles across deserts and jungles and mountain ranges around the world? And that's what I did in 40 countries all over the planet. And ultimately I ended up in the Sahara Desert, because that's where everybody ends up eventually, right? And I found myself trying to become the first person in history to run all the way across the Sahara, more than 4,500 miles. And this journey was the greatest lesson teaching moment that I'd ever had in my life, because I planned it for a year, and by the time I got to the west coast of Senegal to begin this run, I thought I had made every plan. I had thought about every contingency, everything that could go wrong, and I was wrong, because what I didn't plan on is that all of those things would go wrong at the same time, and that they would bring about a certain type of despair that I had never felt before. And it ended up being an incredibly difficult situation, but the lesson that I learned in the Sahara Desert was one that I've learned over and over again. The only miles that I can run are the ones that are right in front of me, right here, right now. No matter what problem there is, I can't run tomorrow's miles today. And so if I focus on just getting through this day, this moment, then I have a chance of continuing on and being able to do it again tomorrow. So that run ended up being over 4,500 miles. I ran 2 marathons every single day for 111 consecutive days without taking a day off. Matt Damon was kind enough to produce a documentary film about the experience, And together we started a nonprofit called H2O Africa. And H2O Africa is today known as water.org. And we are the largest clean water nonprofit in the world with over $1.5 billion in funding. And that all came from this crazy notion that doing something like running across the Sahara Desert could have some sort of an impact in the world. So I remind everybody in my orbit, never discount the crazy ideas. Do them because you want to do them. The only reason I did that run is because I wanted to see if I was capable of it. But so many other good things came out of it in the long run, no pun intended. So I want to leave you with this final thought. I try to live my life as much as possible through the ideal of what I call attraction rather than promotion. I still do a lot of really long races. I run 100-milers all the time, and people ask me, why are you still doing this? And I do it because I'm preparing for that day that will come. The one that will come that tells me to pick up a drink again, or that the despair that I'm feeling is so deep that I can't possibly get out of it. During the course of running 100 miles, there will come a moment where I want to quit. And I'm counting on that moment to feed me, because the parts that we feed are the parts that survive. So when I reach that place where I'm certain that I cannot go farther, I find a way to just keep moving. The worst part of that, and I think this holds true for relationships, for jobs, for every part of our life, is when we hit that moment of deep despair, we are certain that the rest of our life, or the rest of this race, or the rest of this job will always feel this bad. And that's what we're worried about. But it's not true. If we just let the moment pass by, it will. Highs and lows don't last. They're just fleeting moments, and we spend most of our lives in this middle ground that's a bit of trudgery, but that's life. And I've learned that if I continue to voluntarily put myself into difficult positions through physical exercise, running for the most part, that I will continue to build the walls around the despair, and I'll be able to keep that down. So back to the idea of attraction rather than promotion. All I mean by that is I have so many mentors. Many of you are watching this right now. I may have never told you how much I admire you, but I do. And I'm watching you, and I'm taking cues from you, and I'm borrowing behaviors from you. And I know that there are other people watching me doing the same thing. So it's not about me promoting my lifestyle, because it's not my place to tell anyone else how to live. But I choose to live publicly and openly, and to share not just the good things, but in particular the struggles that I have. Because struggle is the thing that we all relate to more than anything else. And I know if I share those, that I'll continue to build my fellowship, my community, the love that I feel for people and from people. And that's how I keep myself safe and sober and growing as a human being. So I hope to see you all live at the next Never Alone Forum. And for now, let's just keep it moving together. Okay, you can sit back down. I'll see you down the trail.